Oh my goodness. If I'm gonna have a run, I'm gonna have to have it right now. Good old run. Doing 6 kilometers a day doesn't take long before it just feels amazing. Running. If it was a drug, it would be illegal. Right. Now, I wanted to talk today about, remember a few weeks ago the government said it was going to bring forward its ban on new petrol and diesel sales, including hybrids, from 2040 when they originally scheduled to have them banned. Now they're going to ban them from 2035 or sooner, maybe even as early as 2032 if industry can get there in time. And I think that's quite exciting actually, but can we actually do it? I thought one of the things that might help illuminate some of the challenges and some of the things which are not challenges, quite honestly, would be for me to go through the have you say, or some of the have you say comments that were under this article, because it's kind of a snapshot of people who, for the most part, know nothing about EVs, as you'll see in a minute. But I've got to go get Jasper from school, so we'll pick this up while I'm waiting for the school to... So I don't forget my sunglasses. Otherwise what happens is I just slowly drain my car of sunglasses. And then I find myself driving along with the sun going straight in my eyes, because, you know, winter time. The sun's always low in winter. It works, sort of. Uh-oh, we're losing containment. I bought myself a new Gorilla Pod type thing, you know, the flexible tripod. That was something I got while I was in Thailand, and I'm trying it out. It's great because it means in the car I can now take some shots, attaching it to my steering wheel when I'm stationary, of course, and I can have both my hands free, which is great because I'm going to need my hands in order to have a look at some of these comments. Only problem is the camera might move slowly and then I'll have to reposition it. Oh, it's just... Uh-oh, we're not pointing in the right direction. Now we're pointing in the right direction. Okay, brilliant, let's have a look. So, the first few comments that leapt out at me, and there's quite a few comments that go along these lines, is that, you know, there's the very first one, actually, the highest rated comment on this section. Things like 60 years ago, the world population was 2.5 billion, now it's over 7. That is a big problem, and that's why we need to cut back on things like petrol and diesel. And whilst that may be true to some extent, there's a problem. There's no way to limit the birth rate without doing something really draconian, something that is not going to be nice. You know, a bit like that one-child policy they had in China, but I mean, that's just, is that really something we want? It might be something the planet needs, but is that something that the social consequences of which are acceptable? I doubt it. I have an alternative suggestion. One of the things that people have noticed is that as a country becomes more affluent, people have better jobs and more money, they tend to have less children. So, the best way to get the global population to drop in a nice, slow, controlled manner and not be increasing like crazy would be for everyone to have a first world standard of living. And I think that sounds absolutely fine. That's the direction I think we're going to need to work on in the long term if we actually want to bring the birth rate down. Everything else is just pie in the sky. So given that we can't bring the birth rate down, what's important surely is that we try to live as sustainably as possible, like right now. So there's that. Then we have a comment saying, there's a chap here, commutes 56 miles to work each day, doesn't go past a single charge point, has no driveway, what use is an electric car to him? Well, there's a few different solutions. Firstly, local councils are going to need to put in charge points, probably in lampposts, so that at least every other on-street parking space has got somewhere to plug in. It doesn't have to be a fast charger, it doesn't have to be something expensive, it can just literally be a 3 kilowatt charger. That will be fine for overnight, especially in cities where people tend to drive shorter distances. And the other way to fix this would be to make it mandatory for work, if they're going to supply you with a parking space, to also supply you with a way to charge. I think that's probably quite a good way of doing things, because it puts the onus on business, and, you know, they've got money, some money. The government can give them grants as well, tax rebates, some kind of incentive to make that a little bit less painful for your average business. But that is a solution, I think. I do think that ultimately the charging needs around people without their own parking space, dedicated parking space, there's definitely going to be a bit of a divide between the people that can just charge at home and the people that can't so much. Ready available of quick chargers at useful places like supermarkets. These are the kind of things which will overcome that problem, but it's going to be the last group of people for which EVs really make sense. I think it'll get there, I really do. I just think we've got a very, very long way to go before we get there. All right, problems of charging and range. Oh yes, people are always complaining about charging and range. There's a few people commenting on the fact that the British government pushed for diesels, and now they're going, oh, actually diesels are not so great for the local air quality, so we should probably try and cut back on that, actually. However, just because they got it wrong once doesn't mean they'll get it wrong again. Oh yeah, here we go. Full charging network and electricity generating capacity in place. Well, the generating capacity thing is kind of a bit of a red herring, because people will get into the habit of charging at night, especially when there are compelling, cheaper tariffs available for people that do charge at night, which makes perfect sense. I mean, it does already exist to some extent, but it isn't quite as widespread as it will be when everyone has an EV, because honestly, charging at night, they've got the spare generating capacity most of the time. They literally have to turn off generators and shut down wind farms because they've got nowhere to put the energy. It's a very much a you have to use electricity as it's generated kind of thing, the modern grid. Be better if it had loads of grid storage, but we don't have that yet. So, however, like I said, plenty of spare capacity over the night, which is when I charge my car now, because Tesla released an update which means that when you preheat the cabin, it no longer preheats the battery, which is really annoying. So now what I do is I drive all day running the battery down only 20-30%, then I plug in and I tell it to be ready to leave at 8:15 the next morning, so I can go and take Jasper to school, and the charging process will have preheated the battery, and also it preheats the cabin as well. So that's what I've been doing, and it's been working. I don't love it because it means I have slightly less battery in the car, you know, during the day, which it's all right, but it does mean that if I suddenly got a call saying I need to go up to my mum in Northampton, I would have to go to a quick charger for 10 minutes, but how often does that happen? Like once a year? Not even. Alrighty, next one, what do we got here? Not everyone has the luxury of a driveway to charge on. Yep, absolutely. As I said, that's going to be the big one. Now, we'll get there. It's, you know, it is overcomable, quite sure, but we've got a way to go. Plenty of stuff about Bojo not having a clue. Right. Yeah, I mean, the charging point thing, I do think the government needs to step in and ensure that there is a really strong trunk route network of quick chargers for EVs to use, you know, multiple charge points. It's not good enough to just let Ecotricity do their own thing. What superchargers are doing is fine, but that's only for Tesla, and the government needs to make sure that there is something that is at least as usable as the supercharger network, but for everybody. I hope they'll do that. I don't know, who knows. Right, let's have a look. What do we got here? Infrastructure will never be in place in time. But the thing about infrastructure is, you know, it actually goes in the ground pretty quick once it's a proper priority. Once people like the UK power networks that run the grid in this area are aware of the fact that they can't just fob off requests for extra power. The government is mandating that they've got to get on with it. That's the bit that's generally holding back quick charger installations. Haha, electric cars are a dead technology until they can be fully charged in under 5 minutes. Well, firstly, that is coming. And secondly, I don't think that's necessary. It certainly isn't necessary for me. I suppose it would be helpful for people who are like traveling salesmen who do 800 miles a day, but there are very, very few that do that kind of range in a day. And Tesla's talking about the next version of the Model S having a 400-mile battery. Battery ranges are just going up and up and up. So certainly in 12 years' time, who can say what the average electric car's range might be? It may be more than the average petrol or diesel car in terms of raw distance. Righty, yep. This is one of my favourite sort of comments. Somebody has said, what happens if you get stuck in the snow in an electric car? Look, honestly, if you get stuck in the snow, pray that you're in an electric vehicle. I reckon that leaving the climate control on in this car, I could probably sit in here for something like 20 hours, and that's on a 50% charge, assuming I don't get stuck in the snow when it's fully charged. Still, 20 hours is a lot longer than you'll be able to run a petrol or diesel engine for. You're just going to run out of fuel. End of story. And if I actually really had to survive on the side of a mountain and I didn't want to get frostbite for, I don't know, a substantially longer amount of time, weeks possibly, drinking snow and eating, I don't know, my dead passengers. Ugh, that's a horrific thought. But you get my point. If I was stuck in the car for a very, very long time, what I would do is I would turn off the climate control and just leave the heat seater on. And I reckon the car could probably keep me warm, or at least alive, that way for weeks. Weeks and weeks. It's such a total red herring. Nobody has ever got stuck in a traffic jam and thought, oh my God, I'm in an electric car, I'm going to run out of range and not reach my destination. No, I used to drive a Nissan Leaf with an 80-mile range, so realistically on the motorway 50 miles, and I used to pray for traffic jams, because every time I hit a traffic jam, my average efficiency would go up and I'd be able to drive further, because traffic jams are slower. People don't know these things because they haven't owned EVs. That will change. I mean, there's 12 years before we get anywhere here. Right, here we go. Oh, here we go. Okay, the only zero in any of this is virtue signalling. Zero idea how it can ever be achieved. We have no generating capacity, which is odd because the lights were on when I left my house. We have no rare earth metals. Yeah, they need to be dug up from somewhere and put into batteries, where we then need to take them back out after that battery is finished and recycle them. Recycling is a very important point, which is for the most part missing at the moment, but there's going to be a massive economic incentive to get battery recycling absolutely spot on, because there's going to be a lot of batteries that need recycling. Imagine if you're the company that can recycle those efficiently and make money from it. You're going to make a mint. So there we go. What else have we got here? No charging infrastructure. Well, that's not true. There's some, not enough for everyone to drive EVs yet, but we'll get there. No battery technology. Well, that's not true. I'm in a car with still over 200 miles of range, and I've had it for 5.5 years and done, I don't know, 120, almost 125,000 miles. Battery technology seems just fine by me, and it's getting better all the time. No recycling facilities, yeah, point taken. That is something we need to work on, but it isn't something that will be a big problem for at least another 5-10 years, because guess what? Most EV batteries actually last really well. Okay, the science is real. The planet needs protecting. I agree. I live in Tunbridge Wells. Population 118,000. There are currently 8 publicly accessible charging points, and a majority of properties do not have driveways or private parking. How exactly is this going to work? In a word, quick chargers. Petrol station forecourts, changed over to quick chargers. Nice little convenience shop where you can do 15 minutes, half an hour's worth of shopping. Certainly there's going to be plenty of demand for this at places like Tesco's, Sainsbury's. They'll just cordon off a fifth of their car park and turn that into a bunch of quick charge bays where you have to pay, so you only use it if you need to. So me, I won't use it, because guess what? I can charge at home. But if you can't charge at home, when you go to do your shopping, you use the quick charge bays. Do your shopping, you come back to the car, it's fully charged. And for the average person living in a city, you'll be good for like a week off the back of that. So, we're there now? No, but there's no demand at the moment. So there's no point supermarkets investing the time and money. Plus, I think the government is going to have to add in a bit of an incentive for people. I know we keep coming back to this, but there is definitely a part for government to play. That's why they're announcing this ban ahead of time, significantly ahead of time. They're effectively putting car manufacturers like Toyota on notice that they have got to provide the kind of vehicles which are not going to damage the environment, at least locally, and they've got to do it from 2035 or sooner. Of course. Better start building 5 new nuclear power stations now to meet demand. It will take that long to get planning and building. Yeah, exactly. So let's not build nuclear power plants at all. Let's build wind and solar, and then just have the batteries soak up the excess, from the grid as and when there is excess. I mean, that will really work quite nicely. Cost of electric cars are ridiculous. Yeah, they are more expensive. They are a lot cheaper to run. That's even right now, I would say, including running costs. It's about much of a muchness, but not obviously, I'm talking new cars here, not second-hand cars. Until there are lots of second-hand EVs, they're always going to be vastly more expensive in the second-hand market. Here we go. New petrol Corsa, 16,000. New electric Corsa, 26,000. Fuel cost on new petrol Corsa per month, £150, 100 to 150, depending on how much range you do. So if you keep the electric Corsa for 10 years, it's the same price as the petrol Corsa, but almost certainly with less maintenance problems. And EVs tend to not die for the same reason that old petrol and diesels do. Basically, most people will scrap their petrol or diesel car at the point where continuing to own it costs more than buying a brand new car, because the exhaust goes every 6 months, and then the brake discs and the brake pads, and then the spark plugs need changing, and the oil needs changing, and the cam belt goes, and you've got this and you've got that. There are so many things that wear out on a petrol or diesel car that eventually you wind up having to get something fixed every 2-3 months. And very quickly, you might as well just buy a new EV on finance. It'll work out cheaper over the year. Yeah, there's somebody here saying about, load your car with 5 people and then see how far you go. Well, weight is a bit of a red herring, actually, when it comes to EVs. If I fill this car with luggage and people, it doesn't feel like it goes appreciably shorter range than when it's just me on my own with no luggage. I can't even notice the difference. There will be a difference, of course, but it isn't much. That difference will be exaggerated in a city environment where you have to stop and start and stop and start, but it's not, that's not a big one. Banning hybrids is just sheer stupidity. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think hybrids are actually a great idea. I understand that it's much easier right now. It's a great stepping stone. I recommend people get into that immediately, but if only because they'll save a lot of money as well as produce less emissions. But equally though, it's going full EV, and you get a better car when it's full EV. You've got more space, you've got more reliability, you've got less complexity, and it tends to be about the same price, because let's be honest, hybrids are very, very, very complicated. They've got an awful lot of stuff in them to go wrong. There won't be enough electric cars. Again, 12 years. Car manufacturers across the world are moving towards EVs in very strong terms. Who can say what the world will be like in 12 years? Certainly, if you give the car manufacturers plenty of notice, I think there's a pretty good chance that there will be a substantial improvement in choice. Right. I've actually got to go get Jasper now. It's that time. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and found it interesting. If you have, remember to like it and share it and subscribe if you haven't already, and follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you don't already, and I will see you in the next episode of my vlog. Bye. I hate editing large blocks of talking where it's me talking. It's just so time consuming and not much fun. Jesus, 20 minutes! That's one problem with having this thing on the steering wheel, is my arm doesn't ache, which is my usual indication that I've recorded for far too long.